we can start. Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with you today for this Women in GI career chat. I want to thank especially Dina Tiniakos and Equality and Diversity Task Force for organizing this career chat and for choosing this very, very interesting topic, which is English in career, in medicine and science, and how to break through the language, the barrier languages. And to discuss this topic with us, we have three experts, and I'm very, very pleased to introduce Roos Pouw from Netherlands, Amsterdam AMC. She is a very young researcher, very driven and passionate, and she is also 2020 Rising Star awardee. Congratulations, Roos, and welcome.
Thank you, Wafaa.
And we have with us Professor Rebecca Fitzgerald. She is very famous. I don't think she will need that much introduction. She has contributed very, very tremendously to research in gastroenterology, and she has been awarded several prestigious prizes. And she has an amazing career in research and publishing and gastroenterology. She is very much involved in medical education and the director of medical education in Trinity College in Cambridge. And also senior associate editor in gastroenterology. And we are very much interested and curious to have your insight as an educator and as an editor in language barriers. And we have also with us, very welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you very much.
And we have with us also Mohamed Alboraie from Cairo, Egypt. He's a very dear friend. He is a board member of a very young and dynamic organization in Egypt called Earth. And we are very, very pleased to have you with us today, to have your insight as a non-native English speaker and what are the challenges you have faced during your trainings. And welcome, Mohamed.
Welcome, Wafaa.
And just to start, I will give you a very quick background of my journey with languages, and then I'll hand it over to the speakers and experts with us to share their experiences too. So I'm from Morocco, and as probably you would know, Morocco is an Arab-speaking country. So my main language and first language is the Moroccan dialect, Arabic Moroccan dialect. And we have a very, very early exposure to French, as French is our official, second official language. So at school we start very early. English, French and Arabic at school very, very early. So we're exposed to both languages. So we are bilingual very early. And nowadays, actually, English has been included in a lot of schools as a third language really early in schools. But back in my time, it was only at high school that we have this possibility to have classes, English classes. So that's what I had. I was very much interested and I loved English that much that when I got to medical school, and just for you to know that medical school in Morocco is in French, I was so much interested and loving English, so I didn't want to lose contact with it. So I started English language school, and I did that for 3 years, 3 hours a week for 3 years, from my third year at medical school until 6th year. And I enjoyed it so much just to be in contact with native speakers because our teachers were native speakers. So this was a very good experience for me. I did it just for fun, actually, just to be in contact with English. But throughout my medical studies, I felt that it was a very, very good addition to my medical education. And I felt really at ease studying medicine in English. I had extracurricular interest in English literature. And it was very handy, actually, when I came to my thesis in medical school. I did all the research in English, even if my thesis was in French. And afterwards, when I started residency in gastroenterology, I just felt comfortable actually being updated and finishing and actually going the next level with my education for my own, actually, and being in contact and updated with the guidelines in English and reading literature, medical literature in English. I was pretty much comfortable with it. And afterward, when time came actually for me to share my science and present actually my work in international congresses, it was pretty much easy for me to do so because I had so much experience with English literature and medical literature. So that was very good addition, but it was mainly personal effort actually to do it. And I was aware really very early in my medical studies that English is the way to go, is the language of science. And that's how I did it. And actually being aware of this and having this, not problem, but having medical school in French in Morocco is kind of limiting actually for medical students. That's why with two of my colleagues who are in the same had the same journey as I had, and had this personal effort actually to be in contact with English as much as possible during their medical school. We have developed actually this course called Medical English for young students at first year in medical school, and that we do it actually for fun and just mainly to make them aware that English is the main language for science, and to make them aware of this really early in their medical studies, so they will do this personal effort, since we don't have an official medical medical English studies in our schools yet, medical schools. So this is my journey with English, and as of course you would imagine, it was easier for me to be interacting with colleagues, international colleagues. It made it easier for me to go abroad and train and etc. So it was a very, very good addition. And I want to know your experiences. Roos, please, can you share with us your language journey? It's very interesting to see what Netherlands is doing, actually.
Yeah. So I'm from the Netherlands, indeed. I work as a gastroenterologist at the Amsterdam University Medical Center. That's also the place where I did my PhD. And my main focus is on early detection and treatment of patients with early esophageal neoplasia. And my language, so for this career chat, I had to think a little bit how my language journey went. So I was raised bilingual. I have a German mother and a Dutch father. So from a young age, I learned two languages and communicate in two languages. And I think that sort of helped me, also to like languages, because it's a tool to reach people in different countries. And the Netherlands is also a very small country, so no one in the world speaks our language. And the Dutch people have been traveling abroad for centuries. So I think learning foreign languages is really a Dutch thing. And we're exposed to foreign languages, and mainly English, from a young age. Because as kids, when you watch television, none of the television shows for kids are dubbed in the Dutch language, because it's just not worthwhile for the industry, I think. So you have to watch English series from a very young age, and I think that really gives you an advantage just to hear the language and to understand it a bit from an early age. And then we get English as a language in school. Which everybody has to take. So you can choose if you learn French or German or Spanish, but English everybody has to learn. So then you get, I think, a really good basic English. And then I went on to medical school, where most of the books are in English. So you sort of, you have to learn it, otherwise you cannot teach yourself your study and what you have to know. But then at the end of my studies, I went to Boston for 6 months for a scientific internship. And that's when I really think, learned a lot of the English speaking and reading, because you have to communicate with all your colleagues in the lab, and also outside of work, you have to communicate with your friends and roommates. So you learn English on a whole different level. So not just the study stuff and the work stuff, but also the social communicating, reading, etc. So that is a little bit my journey. And then after that, I started my PhD, which was also mainly in English, and you have to communicate with your colleagues abroad, and you have to go to congresses. And I think it's just very nice that you have a language which connects us all. And also thinking about it, when you have a conference, I think the minority of the people there have English as their mother tongue, and most of them have it as a second or third language. So I think it's great that there's something that connects us all. And what I try to do mostly also is, well, there are a lot of really good English writers and nice literature. So just to keep up to date, I also just try to, if I buy a book, I try to buy it in English just to, well, keep a bit up to date and not only use English during work. And I think it's very nice that you, well, organize this career chat to talk about it and see everybody's perspective on this.
I'm not sure. If we've lost Wafaa, but I could maybe go next.
Yeah.
Roos, maybe you can mute because there's
Hello.
an echo.
Do you hear me? Thank you very much, Ruth. Thank you very much. Maybe move to Mohamed to share with us his experience with languages, and we'll go later to Rebecca as a native speaker to give us her point of view in this matter. Please, Mohamed, go ahead, share with us.
Thank you,
your
Wafaa.
experience.
I think I have to talk before Rebecca, because if Rebecca talked, she will talk the proper English. I will be uncovered. So let's start with my background. I'm a consultant of gastroenterology and lecturer of gastroenterology in Al-Azhar University in Egypt. And I'm the Secretary General of Egyptian Association for Researchers Training in Hepatogastroenterology, and also I'm a member of the Equality and Diversity Committee of UEG. In Egypt, we start learning languages since young age. This is for the current time, but in the past, we were having two different schools which teach languages from younger age. I mean, from the entry of the school. These are called language schools, and the regular schools. I have been studied in the regular schools. I was studying in these regular schools. So I started to learn English at the age of 12 or 13. So this was a little bit challenging. And then after that, when I went to the Faculty of Medicine, everything was in English. And we had a language teaching professor called the professor teaching us terminology, which is the Latin part of the medicine, and all the studies were in English. So we study anatomy, histology, and physiology, and everything in English. So this helps us a lot to practice the English language. After that, I went to work in some foreign countries in the Gulf area, and I worked in Saudi Arabia and in Kuwait. So those countries have multinational communities. So the only language available is English, because you cannot talk with colleagues from India or colleagues from Philippines or colleagues from Europe in their own language. So we have doctors from Hungary, we have doctors from Germany, we have doctors from India and Philippines, and nurses also from these countries. So we had to practice English. So this make us improving our language skills. I have also been trained in Germany, where the Deutsch is predominant there. But I can also tell that they accept the English in the training. They made a meeting with me in the beginning. My professor made a meeting with me before accepting me to be trained in the department, to ask me about what are the medical skills I have and what are the language levels that I have. So when he was convinced that I can talk in English properly, he accepted me to be working in Germany. Then he advised me to learn Deutsch or German. So while working, everybody was trying to help. I mean, most of people in Germany, especially the eastern part in Germany, don't know English too much, or maybe they don't like to practice it. They prefer to talk in German, in Deutsch. But they were trying to help as much as they can. There were no some as colleagues may imagine like discrimination based on the language. No, at all. But you may face some difficulties or barriers. So I tried sometime to overcome this barrier by learning the German language. I tried to use the commonly known English terms or English words. So this facilitates my training in German too much. I think if any colleague wants to be trained abroad in an English-speaking country or a non-English-speaking country, English will be a help for him to communicate properly with the staff and with the colleagues or the supervisors. But I recommend everybody who wants to be trained in a non-English speaking country, at least to know the basic level of the language in this country, so he can deal everywhere. It's not only inside the department. You can deal in the car parking, you can deal in the shops, you can deal in the restaurants. So this is the hospital is part of your life, but the rest of your life is outside the hospital, where you talk with people who have no much experience in English maybe. So you need also to add this skill to you. This is a brief experience that I had in my journey in the career, and I would like to hear from Rebecca how she is dealing with non-English speakers now.
Yeah, exactly. Rebecca, as a native English speaker, we can imagine that it's a big advantage actually in the medical field. So we are expecting probably that there are some challenges with foreign fellows and medical students, and we want to hear more about this.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Really interesting discussion. And I have to say, I always feel very inadequate, lazy, or maybe envious of all you guys who can speak many languages, because really I only speak English. I could just about order myself dinner in France. I also had the experience when I was working at Stanford of realizing that actually, you know, the English spoken in the US and the English spoken in the UK is also sometimes a little bit different, and I've been caught out throughout my whole career by the different spelling of esophagus that we see in the UK and really the rest of the world. Yeah, I think we've got it easy in many ways as native speakers, but as Roos says, English is a fantastic, it's the connection between all of us. And I think it's a huge pleasure and privilege that I have in running a lab, a translational lab, which is truly international. And we have people from all over the globe. And the English is what connects us and enables us to do science together, and to treat patients together and do trials together. So, thank goodness you are all so talented, and we can all connect together in English. And I think the culture exchange and the richness, our lab certainly would not be what it is without having people from all over the globe that bring their unique perspectives. And of course, there are challenges, when you come to a lab and you really haven't spoken a lot of English or written English before. And certainly, over the years, we have people with very different levels of experience of communicating in English. And, I really hope that their experience is that this quickly ceases to become a barrier. And as you all know, once you're immersed in a language and a culture, you very quickly adapt. And I guess my approach as a PI to people who find English a little more difficult is to make sure that they're made to feel very comfortable, very welcome, that they have lots of opportunity to do practice for formal presentations. And I think practice and having an environment where people really feel comfortable to practice and make mistakes is very important when you're preparing for presentations. And I think that's true for all of us. Some people are very natural presenters. Some of us find it more difficult. You might be shy, might find it just difficult to put the concepts away and across in a clear way. And that can be true whether you're the English native speaker or not. But I think those practice forums are really important and something that we really try and foster in the lab. And similarly, with writing scientific papers, writing a thesis, you need help and guidance. We offer formal courses and things, but I think a lot of it is just learning on the job and having an open dialogue. And actually, often people without English as their first language, their grammar can be rather better than us native speakers. So sometimes they will correct my grammar as well as the other way around. And I think that's also a very healthy exchange. And as you asked me to comment on kind of from an editorial point of view. So I think, journals, and certainly in gastroenterology, we try really hard to put the English, in the presentation as a secondary thing and focus on the science and whether we think the paper should go out for review based on the quality of the science that's being presented. But nevertheless, I think it would be, naive to think that the quality of the presentation and the language doesn't have some effect when you're reading and reviewing something. So I think when you're preparing papers to submit for publication, if you have got someone who can have a look at it for you, who is a native English speaker, then that's probably a very good and helpful idea, just so that you have, the paper does have the best chance. But I think part of the role of journals is to try and put that as a second consideration. And there's a lot of work that goes on with the final editing and proofing of these articles to help with that process, so it doesn't have to be perfect the first time around. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for sharing this very important insight as a native speaker, as an editor. And maybe I'll move to Roos. If you want to share with us, what's your point of view of the challenges we can face in research in matter of language barrier? And there are so many aspects of research where language can be an obstacle, actually. Please, Roos, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think, as you said, there are a lot of different aspects. I think when it comes to doing your research, that's mostly done in your own environment. So I don't think the language barrier really is a problem there. And also, if you're reading papers which are mostly in English, of course, you just have, I think you need the time to really understand what's being explained in the paper. And if you come across words you don't understand, look it up, because after reading a couple of papers, you will notice that a lot of the language will be repeated, and actually it is the same. So if you struggle at first, at least that was my experience, just take your time to really understand with a dictionary online, which is very easy nowadays. And that also helps you writing your own research. And I think what Rebecca already said is that don't be afraid to ask others and to ask for feedback. And I think that holds for multiple aspects. I think if you have to present at a conference, really prepare yourself well, because if you're prepared, you have nice slides with clear text, and you know what you want to bring, what you want to tell. I think that really helps. And if you've had the chance to practice for colleagues who can correct your English or correct the message you're trying to bring across, I think that really helps. And if you put in some time there, I think you're much more confident if you're on stage. And then it's also just fun to do a presentation in English. And also when you're practicing, try to have your colleagues ask the questions afterwards in English, not in your own language, but in English. So it's, I think, a good way for your colleagues to, learn English, and also for yourself, just to try to understand the question and prepare an answer. And I think if you've gone through that process before you're on a stage at a conference, I think that really helps. And that's at least what I found very helpful. And for the paper writing, also the same. If you have a native speaker or someone who's just very good in English, ask them to have a look at your paper, because it really helps. And it really gets better, I think.
Yeah, there's also this part of grant applications. When you are really not really comfortable with English, maybe it can be challenging too.
Yeah, especially for a grant application, you, of course, there are often restrictions in how many words you can use, and you just want to write a clear message. It shouldn't be too difficult as well, because the reviewers for grant application are often not per se experience or experts in the field you're applying for. So you might be an expert in the English language that's used in your field of expertise, but when you're writing a grant application, the language often is a bit more general. At our university, there are some very good courses in writing English. So I think that was also very helpful. And just if you get feedback from others, I would always advise just to listen to it, and also send your grant application out to someone who's not an expert in the field, and just ask them if they understand what you're trying to tell. Because for grant application, it would be a pity, because as Rebecca is saying, for if you have a paper or a manuscript which you're submitting somewhere, they might be able to, well, they might think, well, the English we will look at later, but for grant application, it has to be, well, it is what it is. So I think there you should put maybe in some extra effort to have the English language correct. So that's not something that the reviewers will, well, look at and think, well, this is not clear, we will reject this. That would be a pity.
Yeah. Main message, ask for help if you need some insight into your language and the way you're using English. I agree with you. And in terms of presentation, actually, what you can rehearse as much as you can. And actually the presentation, usually what I have the experience with younger colleagues who are not comfortable with how they pronounce, actually, not because of the content, but because of the impressive, of course, surrounding of presenting in an international congress. It's not always easy for younger colleagues. And the presentation part is pretty much easy because you can rehearse and you can have notes, etc., to help you figure out and go comfortable for the presentation. But the Q&A part is the most challenging part. What do you think, Roos? I think this is the most challenging part for a person who's not comfortable with the language, to have questions and answer and being able to improvise actually with the language you're not comfortable with. And when you are not comfortable with the language, in your brain is more of a translation. So you need to translate everything you have to be able to figure it out correctly. When you're more comfortable with the language, you're able to think in this language and you make it your own and you're able to improvise in this language. So maybe at the first stages, when you're not comfortable, it's not easy actually to manage the Q&A part of a presentation. Do you have any experiences with that?
Yeah, I think that's a very recognizable problem. And it's also something you sometimes see at conferences. I think the practicing is, again, the most important, I think. Try to practice in English, have your colleagues ask questions, so you already get a little bit more familiar with improvising. And also just take your time, and if you don't understand the question, don't be afraid to ask the person who asked the question to rephrase, and just take your time to think of an answer. Don't panic. I think we've all been there, and everybody in the audience will understand if you need a bit more time to answer the question. And also, I think sometimes at conferences, it really helps if you have a good chair. They sometimes help to rephrase the question. Sometimes people ask questions can be very lengthy and very detailed. And then sometimes it helps if the chairperson just, sort of shortens the question and rephrases the question in a more understandable way. I think that's always very good when that happens. And especially don't feel embarrassed. I think that's the most important thing. Everybody will understand if you need a bit more time.
And there's another part actually that is challenging when you communicate with English speakers who are not native speakers. It's the accent part. Some people speak with very, very strong accent, and you have sometimes difficulties to understand because your level of English doesn't allow you to understand every other accent there is. And I want to move to Mohamed for this part, because what are your experiences in this matter? And some people find accents really charming, as Andrea always say. It's true. When you hear somebody speaking English with a French or Spanish or Italian or Arabic accents, it's actually part of their identity, and that's what makes them who they are. And it's making the language yours. And some people are really afraid to express themselves because they have this strong accent. And what do you think, Mohamed? What's your experience with that?
I think we shouldn't be shy. because this is not our native language. So if I'm talking like that, separate words, and you understand it, it is better than trying to imitate the native speaker or talk in rapid, fast English, which is not compatible with my level of English. I see that different countries, they have special accents in English, but they have also the ability to express it slowly and to talk in a slow manner so I can understand them. I don't want to name any specific nationalities, but sometimes in Asia, people talk strange English for us. We cannot hear them or cannot understand them well. So we'll just tell them, talk slowly, and then we understand each other. The same for us. I think in Arabic countries, we are talking like separated words, and it is characteristic for us. Everybody can understand us. And in Europe, I think most of the European can talk an understandable English. Going back to the native English speakers in UK and the US, I just want to explain that they are talking so fast, so as they are usually practicing. So they have to be a little bit slow if they are talking in an international community, so everybody can understand, because we cannot follow the speed of your talk to understand. We have to listen, and then we have to understand, and then we have to formulate some ideas if we want to discuss or to want to ask a question. So if you are talking so fast, we will lose this chance. This is my experience about the different pronunciations. I have been also trained for some time for the membership of the Royal College of Physicians, and I will just share some experiences from colleagues who had the exam in United Kingdom, in London or Glasgow. They face some problems, not with the people living in the metropolitans in London or Glasgow. They face some problems with people coming from Scotland, for example. They have a special accent and they cannot follow the English they are telling. So these are having some problems with the colleagues who are passing the exam. They cannot pass the exam because they cannot understand the patient. So this is some of the challenges that we may face also.
Yeah, and about communication with patients, that's a very good point. When you are training in a ward where the language is not your main language, and it's not easy actually to communicate with patients. And sometimes actually in my experience, even in my own country, I have patients coming with a different dialect I don't understand at all. So I need a translator in my own word actually to be able to speak to my patients, which is really funny sometimes, but this is the truth. And yeah, you just get the help you need. And I'd only imagine how hard it was for you to jump from actually Arabic, English to German and be able to communicate with patients in German while you were learning the language.
I just had a colleague in the department who is coming from East Europe, and he has his own language, and he's talking German. And he was my senior colleague who was training me. So we were facing some problems to communicate in English because he's not talking proper English and I'm not talking proper German or his own language. So we had to sit together just to put items to be done every day and to put some checklists. So we need to overcome this barrier every time when I'm asking him something in long English and he's not properly understanding. So sometimes making notes, making schedules, making some things fixed allow you to be trained well.
Yeah, that's what we try to do sometimes, because we have some foreign medical students and they are in the training with patients. So they don't speak Arabic or Moroccan Arabic. So they speak sometimes French, and sometimes they don't really speak it that well. And our patients not all speak French. So this is sometimes hard as an educator to be able to transmit everything you need to transmit in terms of communication with patients when the student is not able actually to communicate that well. I don't know, Rebecca, if you have any experiences in that, having fellows, but probably not medical students, but fellows when they need to communicate with patients. Do you have any tips, any solutions to help them actually be able to communicate when they're foreign actually?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to do joint clinics, you know, when there's a new fellow and we sit together and do it and discuss. And I think that can be really helpful so that you can, you know, both discuss the medicine and as well as the communication. And Mohamed's absolutely right that, you know, there are very strong dialects within all of our countries, and that's true within the UK as well. And so sometimes we have challenges too. But I think, yeah, I think doing clinics together, and even if then you're not in the same room necessarily, but being able to ask and you know, just have that support is really, really important. And I was thinking when we were talking about the Q&A at conferences, because I think that is a really, really a challenging one. Some of us may have had the experience of doing media training, and in media training, you're always told, you know, have in mind what you want to get across, so that even if you're asked a question which is nothing really, you know, not the question you wanted to answer, or you don't quite know what they're getting at, you still have in mind the thing you really want to say to them, and you just go ahead and say it. And I think you can probably use that strategy a little bit on a conference podium, so that if, you know, if you've really tried hard and the question maybe it's just obscure, you know, it may not be that that it's your understanding of the English language, it may just be that it's not a very good question or it's not been very well put. Sometimes you could just say, well, you know, I think what you mean is, and just say what you want to say, so that you're not really just standing there thinking, well, what do I say? And some of us have had that experience anyway, just, you know, I've been there sometimes thinking, I really don't know what this person is getting at. This question doesn't mean any sense to me. So you just say something, and that can be a good strategy as a backup, I think.
Very good tip. I think it's time to open to the audience the chat, and just for all the participants with us today, if you want to talk and ask or share your comments or experiences, please raise your hand, and the raising hand function is just by clicking on your name, you will have the menu functionality. So just click on a raise hand, so I would see it, and Julia also would help me to see if anybody has a question or want to intervene and share something of their experience with us. And I think that Dina wanted to share something earlier, some of her anecdotes with us. So maybe we'll start with Dina if she's there. Dina?
Hello, yes, I can hear you.
Hi.
Yeah, I wasn't ready to share this anecdote online, but I would be happy to let you know my nice accent in English. So I had this problem in English, I could never pronounce well some words. And when I was doing my PhD and my research in the lab, I had very good friends who were native speakers, but they liked to make fun of my accent. And I didn't take it personally because it was just fun. Anyway, I couldn't pronounce the word fish, like the SH. I can never say it correctly. I always say fish. So they had given me the nickname Fish. I was doing also fluorescent in situ hybridization at the time. So it was a very nice nickname. Anyway, because I never took it personally and I was quite confident on what I was doing, and I knew that at least from the point of grammar and syntax, my English was correct. So I had to live with my accent, and I never let it into the way of obstruct me in any way. I ended up working in the field of non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, so I have to say NAS all the time, also in international fora, but this is what I can do. I cannot get any better on this, and I accept this, and I move on, and I accept the way I use the English, and I'm happy at least that people understand it. So accent was not an obstacle for me. So thank you very much for letting me tell you this.
Thank you, Dina. This is very interesting what you said, is that two main points actually is to be comfortable with who you are and not being, as Mohamed said earlier, not feeling ashamed that you're not talking perfectly English. And I don't know if there is such thing as a perfect English pronunciation. As Rebecca was saying, there are so many accents even in English and dialects. So yeah, if you feel comfortable expressing your ideas and being clear and going direct to the point the simple way, I think English is an extraordinary language to do that, to be really simple. And even if you have accent, that doesn't matter. You don't have to feel ashamed about this. And as Roos was saying, in international settings, almost all people are not really native speakers, so they are like you. And the second point is that when you are dealing with the people in front of you, whether in a professional or non-professional settings, if they are open-minded and willing to accept you as you are, if you have an accent, that's a very important part. As Rebecca was saying earlier, her job as a native speaker is to facilitate and to accompany actually those fellows who are not really comfortable in the language. And I see that there is a very interesting chat going on between Monica and Dina. And thank you, Monica, for sharing your ideas. If you want to share it directly, please feel free and raise your hand out to unmute yourself. And Monica was saying that as an officer as a house officer, sometimes she had to read her supervisor's lips to understand what the person is saying correctly, because she was not comfortable with the accent, because it was from a region of UK with the accents sometimes tough. And she was saying that it's really hard to master the Q&A session, and it takes really time to be comfortable with that. And also writing in English. It's yeah, please, Monica, you're here. Go ahead.
Hello. Welcome everyone, and thank you for your interesting comments. My journey with English was really long because I come from Poland. Our education is all in Polish, and even university medical school is all in Polish. So we had obviously some classes in English, but it wasn't enough. And what I decided to do one day was to take a gap year at medical school, and go to London to work and to learn English from daily life and from communication with natives. And I think that what was really helpful to me, and that raised my English to another level, because what I've realized that what I've learned at school was nothing. That was just English from books. But what you need to speak. You need to communicate with people. You need to break this feeling inside that that prevents you from speaking in that particular language you want to learn. And I think then when I came to the UK to work as a doctor, that was also quite difficult, because I didn't quite know all words for medical English. And as I said, I had to often read my supervisor's lips to understand what they were saying. And sometimes if I didn't know the word, I was writing this sort of the pronunciation, and I was checking in a dictionary what actually that meant. And I've been living in the UK for 14 years now. My English is still perhaps not perfect, but I still learn, believe it or not. Every day there is something I learn. So yeah, I think you just need to persevere, and you need to practice, you need to speak, you need to listen and watch TV, and in English or in any other language you want to learn, and speak to people as much as possible. Although sometimes it is difficult, and you may feel very self-conscious of your language abilities, but I think you just need to be brave and open up.
Thank you, Monica. This is very interesting insight, and I completely agree with you. A language, to master it, you need to practice it as much as possible. And Roos was saying earlier that she reads a lot of non-medical books in English, and being able actually to be exposed to the language as much as possible and trying to speak it as much as possible, and don't lose any opportunity to practice it. With natives, it's very good because you have the good level of pronunciation, etc. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I have an example for myself. I've been exposed to Spanish. I speak 4 languages. Spanish, I've been exposed very, very early in my childhood to Spanish, TV, family, etc. So in my ears and brain, I understand perfectly Spanish, and I can speak it also perfectly. But I'm losing it because I don't practice it that much. I don't have people to practice it with. So yeah, a language, to be good at a language, you need to practice it as much as possible and don't lose any opportunity. I think that Natasha has a comment. Please, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So I have 2 questions. One is to the native speaker expert, to Rebecca. One to the international expert. They are connected. So my biggest fear is that my ideas and my solutions or my work will be depreciated because of the quality of English, especially written English. So the question to Rebecca is, as you are the in the editorial board of American journal, have you noticed that I know that you as a reviewer not, but have you noticed that that reviewers or editors are biased and they depreciate the work and the quality of the research because of the quality of English? And my question to the international experts is, where is the border, and where we should stop caring about English and said, okay, I spent 2 hours on writing this email with my idea, and now I'm just, looking for some mistakes and correcting grammar, but this is the time when I have to do other things, and I have to stop, and I cannot spend more time on writing this email. This is the best I can get. So how are you dealing with the situation when you just have to let it go?
Rebecca, if you want to comment.
So yeah, Nastasia, your English, of course, is excellent. But you're right. As an editor, I think journals take this very seriously now, and we don't want to discriminate because of the language and miss really important contributions to the journal. So I think it's it is on all editors to try very hard to put the English as a secondary factor and try and get to what's there. But as I kind of said earlier, nevertheless, if it really is difficult to understand what it is about, then of course that would potentially put you at a disadvantage. I think it's pretty rare in my experience these days that something is really, the language means that I really can't understand what the paper is about. So I think it really shouldn't be a disadvantage, and those things can be easily fixed through the editorial process, and most journals now have fantastic facilities to do that. But you're right, it can alter the way it's perceived, and I think it's great to get people to help you if you're submitting a grant or a paper, dissertation, to really get some help and advice on the language. And I think most colleagues, I would hope, would be very happy to proofread and to give some advice in that direction. So I think none of us should be afraid to get our papers critiqued, our grants critiqued, and that's for all of us, for me as well. For all of us, not just about the way you put it across, the English, but how you describe the concepts as well. You need advice on all of it, because writing a good paper and writing a good grant is really a tricky thing. So and the English is part of that, but not all of it. So I think ask, but also be somewhat reassured that any journal worth its salt shouldn't be too biased just based on the English content.
Thank you, Rebecca. Mohamed or Roos, do you want to comment on what Nastasia said?
Yeah, so the question was, when is good enough, if I understood correctly, right? If you're trying to write an email with an idea in English, I know the feeling that you're reading and you're adjusting, and then you're reading it again and adjusting, and then you realize that you've been spending a lot of time. And And it's a little bit what I think Rebecca also pointed out, that I think you should be focusing on the concept you want to bring across, and maybe have someone else read that part. I think the most important thing is that if you think, well, the concept is clearly written, it also depends, I think, where you're sending it to and to whom. If it's someone you know well, and they know what your situation is, I think you should always give them the opportunity to interact if they don't understand what you mean, just to have them ask questions. I don't think there's a real time you should spend on something like that, but I think the most important thing is that if you think the concept is okay, have someone else have a look at it, maybe just someone outside of your like a colleague or someone at home, and I think the language there is less important than the concept. So I think I don't really know how to put it, but I think if you shouldn't worry too much about the tone of the email, and I think that someone should be able to read through that as long as the concept is clear.
Yeah, I agree. Professional emails can be really tricky, and you need sometimes help to do it right. Mohamed, yeah, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to share some experiences from my early career. When I was trying to be trained abroad, I was sending emails by my own language or my own concepts or expressions, and I was not receiving any replies for these emails. This simply because what I understand here and I trying to express in English may not be the same there. So if I told one of the professors I want to work in your department, this means that I need to be having license, and I have to seek salary, and I have to have the level of experience and skills to practice, to work, to just write work. So sometimes you need, as Roos said, to have one of your senior colleagues or expert colleagues who are better to communicate with the international community if you are in the beginning of your career. So if you want to be trained abroad, just tell the colleague, the senior colleague who's expert in that, I just want to be trained in London. So I want to have the endoscopy training and this procedure. I want to spend 6 months. I want to be on my own expenses. So he will formulate this in a nice way, understandable by the professor you are sending the email. If you are not doing this and you try to do it yourself, hi, professor, I want to be working in department, full stop. So nobody will reply to you. So it is very important, especially in the beginning of the career, to try to explore the other side of the world, the other countries, the other mentalities, the other, the rules and the laws in these countries. Also, I have also another problem happened to my application for a visa. I had a letter from the professor, Mohamed will work in the department. And then the embassy told, if you are going to work, you have to have a work permit and you have to have an Article 17 visa, not the article blah, blah, blah. So sometimes a single word in the email makes a big difference. So I advise everybody to have a consultation from a senior colleague or his mentor or a professor before sending email to an international big figure.
Thank you, Mohamed, for this very important advice. And I don't see any other hands raised. Julia, if you have.
Wafaa, I was just going to comment on that because I was going to say a similar thing to that, Mohamed. I think job applications are a special case, and heads of department, academic heads, and so on. You get lots and lots of emails about job requests, and for those, you need to be seen, be heard, and I think that's the occasion when it's very different if you know the person, as Roos was saying. But if it's a kind of an unsolicited email about a job, then then the crafting of that is probably quite important. And having an advocate or someone also to make contact on your behalf and put in a kind of upfront reference or something can be hugely helpful to getting somewhere with those. So I think that's probably the one area where it is worth going the extra mile.
I just want to focus that the way of communication can be not understandable and can it will be an obligation from the professor if he accepts it. So if I try to contact the same professor with appropriate words, he will reply immediately. Okay, we have a training job, or we have a fellowship program, or we can accept international trainee, but they will not practice unless getting the license, some sort like that. If you are trying to contact an international professor, he is busy for sure, and you may reply after 1 or 2 weeks, but the words itself may give some obligation. So make sure that your words are clear and it's not giving an obligation from the other side unless you are properly fulfilling the requirements. That's it.
Thank you very much, Mohamed and Rebecca and Roos. And we still have a few minutes to discuss further. And I think during this chat, we have had a lot of solutions. We have also went through the issues and obstacles, but also a lot of solutions. So do you have any tips, maybe additional tips or experiences or tricks you do to make things easier besides what you've already said, already shared?
Well, I guess I would just say, have some courage, ask, and don't feel like you're alone. These are very common experiences. Even for those of us with English as a first language, science is a complicated business, medicine is a complicated business, and we all have areas where we feel kind of at the edges of our comfort zone. So I think it's another one of those examples where sometimes, you might feel pushed to the limit on a language situation, but, we all have areas where we don't feel quite comfortable. So I think don't feel embarrassed, don't feel afraid. Just say people will be much more accommodating than you might give them credit for. It's a community.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know if you hear me.
Yeah, we hear you. Yes, we hear.
And when Rebecca says the edge of your experiences, and we have recently had in our ward, just to say how complicated sometimes it comes, even if you speak the languages in your environment. We had a Chinese patient, and this Chinese patient didn't speak any other language but Chinese, and it was very complicated actually to communicate. But the resident who was actually in charge of this patient, of his care, she came up with the simple idea of communicating with him through Google Translation. So she would tape actually the question on Google Translation and show the patient in Chinese what the question is, and she managed actually to communicate with him perfectly and to be able to relate the whole medical history, but also explaining the procedures we are going to make and the ERCP and complications, and taking his consent and everything, just through really simple tools like a Google Translation. So I found it pretty interesting. When you have the will, you have a way, and now we have a lot of ways to overcome all language barriers.
I think the technology can help a lot in this, Wafaa, because there are many applications now that can already, translate your voice to another language. Or just you can use the camera of your phone. To my colleague in Kuwait, he was showing us one time that you can translate some rainbow by just putting the camera of the phone on it.
And there are a lot of applications also when you can have this direct communication through an app, actually, with the foreign patient or foreign colleague, with the direct translation. Actually, there are a lot of technological tools now that can help actually better communicate.
And I also think the non-verbal part, like the expression, hand, foot, I think that's the most important. And I think that's why also these sort of meetings are really good, that you can see each other, because then you know that that you're on the same level, and that someone is listening to you and taking the time and is nice. And I think the whole non-verbal communication part is also very important.
I perfectly agree. Yeah, I think we have reached the end of our time. And I want to thank you, especially all of you, for participating and sharing your personal experiences. Thank you very much, Roos, and congratulations again for the Rising Star Award. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for your insights. And Mohamed, thank you very much for being here with us. And thank you to the audience and the DINA and the Equality and Diversity Task Force for this chat. Thank you very much. It is recorded. You can see it afterwards. You didn't have the chance to participate live. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon. And enjoy the Congress.